we surfed the net on that little screen at 14.4 kilobits a second. And we were so proud. Thank you very much for inviting me to the Swiss Innovation Forum. It's quite an honor, and I had an opportunity to watch the program this morning and part of the afternoon, and I'm very impressed at the level of innovation and the level of creativity that is going on here in Switzerland. So what I want to talk about a bit is connectivity amongst people, but also a specific type of connectivity amongst people, and that is the connections that we make when we are actually collaborating to create innovative inventions. I know there's a lot of discussion and a lot of very good discussion on, has connectivity, hurt us in terms of, and cell phones hurt us in terms of our own personal connections, or has it helped us? And of course, I would always vote that, connection has helped humankind tremendously. But again, just a few words to start about how I look at connectivity. I'm really an engineer at heart, and there's a little bit of creativity in there and a little bit of entrepreneurialism in there as well. But I always feel that it's something that pulls us all together, and it's something that's very important to move the world forward when you collaborate to make these kinds of inventions. No one person can create probably even light bulbs, and no one person can create a cell phone or an internet connection to a cell phone. And so that process of connecting with other people in order to not only create these inventions, but to bring them to market is a really fundamental human process, if you will. And I think it applies to whether you're creating some advances in medicine, some advances in technology, music, art. It's a very basic piece of human nature and human connectivity. So first, a few words about my company, Qualcomm. Many people have probably never heard of us. We're the worst known company on the planet, but we have the worst known big company on the planet. But if you have a cell phone, you are using our technology. You are definitely using our technology, and it's very likely you're actually also using our semiconductors in that cell phone. So when Qualcomm was founded in 1985, our founder, Erwin Jacobs, one of the things that he said, which, for a lot of the younger people in this audience will be a huge piece of confusion, he said someday his dream was that everybody would actually have their own phone number. If you remember back in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, you had one phone per household, if you were lucky, and you had maybe one phone per group at your work, and they were wired phones, and that was his vision. And so he started a company with background in utilizing spectrum, with this very scarce radio spectrum that is a scarce resource around the world. And what Erwin Jacobs and Qualcomm has really focused on in the last 20, 30 years is the technology and the inventions that come out of this invisible work. How do you actually squeeze more data and more capacity into this very scarce resource called spectrum? That's sort of the roots of how Qualcomm was started and how our technology started being researched and come to light. We also, but research is just for academic sake unless you actually do something with it. And so we started a business in building the semiconductors and the cell phones. We used to build cell phones. We actually used to build base stations as well, the cell phones talk to, in order to bring that technology to market and to prove it worked. And that is where I ended up coming in. So now we have, when I came on board in 1994, we had about 1,500 employees. Now Qualcomm has almost 50,000 employees, and 2/3 of them are engineers or people involved in research and development. So Now we've divested ourselves of some of these other businesses, like actually building cell phones and base stations. You know, Ericsson and Nokia are much better at building base stations than we were. And certainly the cell phone manufacturers that utilize our chips are very good at building those cell phones. So we design these chips and then we manufacture them at various places throughout Asia. We're known as the largest, there's a lot of jargon in this field, we're known as the largest fabless, that means largest designer of semiconductors in the world, but we don't actually manufacture them. And that gives rise to some interesting sort of policy and geopolitical conversations that we can have later this evening. But I also want to point out, and I don't know if the picture is actually available, but my next comment is a little bit about my background, and as Tobias so kindly said, what we consider the first cell phone that was created, and my part in that creation in invention in 1997. So I was going to actually bring the cell phone with me. It's a little flip phone, but it doesn't boot up anymore, and I was afraid the security people would take it away from me at the airport, so I didn't actually bring it. But I can show you a picture of it if it doesn't come up, and I can talk about that after the talk. So in 1997, actually late 1996, my background is in, I used to work, before I came to Qualcomm, I used to work for Xerox, the Palo Alto Research Center that did you know, the first Ethernet, the first bitmap displays, the first graphical user interfaces. All those firsts came out of the Xerox work. And so my background was actually in internet protocols for computers and running those over Ethernet and wired kinds of solutions. And when I got to Qualcomm, I remember going and complaining to one of my new colleagues, saying, "I need to work for a company who knows what a packet is," because somebody knows what a packet is out there. Because you know, they were working on being able to send cellular voice. And so my observation in late '96, I was actually working on digital fax, and my observation was this is just another digital link. It's just like Ethernet, and it can send data. You know, it can send TCP/IP and data packets as well as voice packets, you know, snippets of voice. And so, fortunately, we had a chief technical officer who also had been, you know, active in the computer industry. And he came to me, I was a senior engineer at the time, and he said, this is in November of 1996, and he said, "Can you have packet data and internet surfing ready in time for the trade show, the big, you know, cell phone trade show in February?" And that was all the excuse I needed. And so myself and about two of my colleagues, I was working on the base station at the time, about two of my colleagues, we invented, there's the phone, very proud of that phone. We invented a very simple way and a very creative way to simply connect that phone. Basically, it was tricking the base station into setting up a voice call and connecting to the internet, and we sent data over it. And so on that little phone, that screen is one of those green and white screens. We hired a little company called Unwired Planet. They actually created a tiny, tiny browser, and we surfed the net on that little screen at 14.4 kilobits a second. And we were so proud. And we showed that at the trade show, and within 1 year, Ericsson had put the capability into their base stations, which had a very broad footprint across the world, and our CEO's son was surfing the net from his Hawaii vacation. And so people saw the possibilities in that kind of technology, and it just grew from there. But my point is you know, I was very proud of that creation. And by the way, I sat through Dr. Hassler's talk this morning, and I did not take LSD before I made that. Although, I don't know if you saw the picture of the box. There's a picture of the marketing box, and maybe the marketing people actually took LSD. At the trade show, we showed it. It was actually yeah, that's a picture I like. And the trade show we showed it at the theme was Star Trek, and so it was actually made to kind of look like a Star Trek communicator that you could flip open with your thumb. And we actually never brought that phone to widespread commercial market because it turns out Motorola held the patent on the hinge. So the commercial phone ended up being more of a candy bar looking phone. But anyway, so we surfed the net then, and it started to get a lot of traction. But the point there is that it wasn't just, Susie having a light bulb moment, or, even my 4 colleagues who all had to go out and buy new suits to demonstrate it. We were all engineers, and in San Diego, when you're in engineering, you wear shorts to work. But it was all the people who had come before us, all the people who had worked on internet protocols for wired communications, all the people who actually had worked on, other spectrum. Probably thousands of people had come together before that, and then after that to make that a commercial reality, rather than just, 1 or 2 people having a light bulb moment. And I think it's those shared collaborations that are really important in any field, that whether it's a technology field or a scientific field, that are really important for making sure you come up with innovations, and also that you bring them to market. And so my next point is bringing these kinds of things to market. It's great to have these great ideas. I can probably, most engineers in this room can figure out how to make anything look good in a lab. But when it comes time to actually produce them at scale and get them into the market, and actually getting people to understand the implications of these things, it's a very different ballgame. And we had no idea. We thought this was pretty cool, but we had no idea, and we would have no idea, and the company had no idea, what this would turn into, that you could, do real-time mapping, and you could do streaming images, and you could stream video, and you could do simultaneous translation at a conference like this over using your cell phone. And so companies and people take a huge, sort of corporate and personal risk when they make these inventions, assuming that if they build it, applications will come. Because it takes a lot of money to pay for engineers to, test this and build the semiconductors and get them manufactured and deal with the regulatory environment, deal with the policy environment, deal with the standards. We put a lot of work into inventions and getting them standardized, so these phones can actually talk to base stations and other phones. And so it's a innovation's a very, very risky process. And my other point about Qualcomm is one of our other big businesses is we license the patents that come out of our work. And I know, pharmaceuticals are a big business here in Switzerland, and they also have, huge risk in what they come, the drugs that they bring to market from a regulatory and a policy and investment risk. And those patents are a really good way to actually, instead of keeping those ideas as trade secrets, they're a way that companies can put their ideas, and inventors can put their ideas out into the world, and yet still get a reasonable and fair return on that kind of investment. So I think that's also a really important point in terms of collaboration, what it actually takes to make these fun innovations real. We also, and so those kinds of shared problems and challenges are also something that I think pulls us together tremendously as humans. We may not have known what this would become and what we were going to do with it, but it was more than cool. We were very excited about, as I imagine many inventors are, about the possibilities for these kinds of projects in a big way or a small way to make the world a better place. And I think that sense of shared purpose is a really important piece of collaboration in making some of these inventions. They're also, as I talked about before, they're difficult from a sort of a corporate perspective in terms of the investment. They're also really hard personally. I mean, there's a lot of CEOs and there's a lot of senior people and there's a lot of engineers in this audience. And everybody knows that most of these industries are really schedule-driven, and you work really, really hard on this stuff. For example, there's 10 million lines of software code that drive that semiconductor that's in the main semiconductor that's in your phone. And when you're working with a customer and you're trying to launch that device, there's a problem. Everybody's losing money because the launch is late, and sometimes you just think, I'm not signing up for this one again. And it takes about 2 years in the semiconductor industry for a high-end chip to go from sort of inception to actual launch in a customer device. And those chips, implement new features. They implement more processing power. They implement the next version of the standard. And so you have engineers and people just continuously doing these different kinds of innovations and this really hard engineering work to bring it out to market. But we say we'll never sign up for that again, and we always do. After the launch party, then we say, oh, okay, what's next? So last but not least, I wanted to touch on, because there's been a really interesting and wonderful theme in this conference around artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, of course, I had a really fun conversation with a group of entrepreneurs and Katrin from Microsoft last night. And artificial intelligence, whether it's the training of training and using the data sets for artificial intelligence, or whether it's the inference, it all runs on semiconductors. It all runs on compute power. And so, we need each other. And as I look at artificial intelligence and the possibilities in medicine and the possibilities in safety and the possibilities for it to help humankind, I'm just really, really impressed. I'm also very nervous, as I think many people are, about the possibilities. I was just talking to somebody about the possibilities for using artificial intelligence in, making deep fakes. One of my issues is, there's so much, if you will, fake news in social media in the world. How do you actually apply artificial intelligence to, instead of blaming artificial intelligence for those deep fakes, how do you actually apply artificial intelligence to maybe figuring out what's fake and what's not fake? And so I think, for me, the issues around artificial intelligence and is it going to, destroy mankind and humankind are more of, instead of just saying, okay, we're just going to block this technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or something else. Instead of saying we're just going to block it, let's look at how we could actually utilize artificial intelligence to make the world a better place, not just, again, in medicine and safety and such, but can we use artificial intelligence to address some of these problems that we think are going to come out of artificial intelligence? So it's a really interesting, it's not my area of expertise, but I think it's a really, really interesting issue that's going to pull us all in, because increasingly our semiconductors run these training algorithms and run these neural networks, and we're very involved in artificial intelligence at the edge, and I think it's the next sort of it's the next big challenge, and it's the next big opportunity for these kinds of technology fields. And with that, back to whether we think we're more connected because of cell phones or less connected because of cell phones. Of course, I would say more connected because of cell phones. So thank you very much. And I think if anybody has any questions, we're happy to address them here or happy to address them out in the forum. But thank you again for the invitation. It's just been a pretty wonderful week here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Susie, please join me. So Susie, let's first have a look to our voting. We asked the question, did technologies have a more isolating or enabling effect on human connections? What are you thinking about the result? Oh, now we have it already. It depends on the type of connection. We are more connected than ever, for sure. We are more isolated than ever. What would you answer?
This is more even than any of the ones I saw this morning. So people are unsure. Of course, I would say we're more connected than ever.
Yeah.
And that's partially because I've been so deeply involved in the connections that we build to make the technology, but also partially because I know it does drive me crazy when, like, my husband only interacts with me via WhatsApp. But it's like, pick up the phone or walk into the room. But I also think from a social point of view, it's been really interesting and fun. I can send pictures to my mother in California, my 89-year-old mother. I can coordinate with my friends at breakfast. I can find my friends when I go pick them up at the airport. And so, I mean, those sound like trivial examples, but I think they're really important social examples.
When you worked on a technology, like, for example, the wireless connection for a cell phone, how much have you been thinking about the possible impact, also from, I think, ethical perspective, or was it just we wanna do it, we wanna get it?
That's a really good question. How do you think about these things in terms of ethical impact? I think at the time you don't think about them because you don't know how broad they will become or not become, and so then. I just thought it was cool, and it was fun, and we were able to wirelessly surf the internet, and we didn't have to go find a computer wired somewhere. But as the technology starts to develop, and I think this is true in AI right now.
That's why I'm asking the question.
As it starts to develop, and we realize both the opportunities and the challenges, I think I would repeat something that Katrin said. You actually have to have regulation, and you have to have policies. In the internet, it became privacy policies in some areas, and I think in AI we have to find a way to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand, if you will, that we can actually regulate it.
How is this possible? Regulation?
It's possible with regulation, and it's possible with technology. Regulation tends to, as I mentioned down on the floor, regulation tends to say, okay, you're gonna block this. You're not gonna do this. And there's some value in that, but I prefer to think of regulation that has an affirmative agenda, a positive agenda, saying, okay, you need to not just block this, you need to have some technical way to make sure that you can identify what's a deep fake and what's not a deep fake. If I had the perfect answer for the regulation, I'd probably be a politician or something.
A last question out of the audience. At what point will the cell phone disappear?
That's a really good question. Somebody asked me last night when we were going to get it implanted in our cells and such, these chips implanted in our cells. I think this, like a lot of 6G, you've heard of the 6th generation protocols and technologies, are looking at not only connecting people and things in the Internet of Things, they're actually looking at new looking to enable new kinds of user interfaces. So I'm not sure in 10 years we'll be carrying around, this has gotten big, this big clunky thing. There's a lot of experiments with wearables and eyeglasses and such, and I think what we call the form factor will differ. I don't think we will be carrying around a square block in 10 years. I hope to be around to see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Susie, it was a pleasure having you with us. Thank you very much.